20 of the country's best doctors had given up on the millionaire, declaring his case hopeless. But then a poor 7-year-old black girl noticed something they all missed, changing everything forever. If you're enjoying this incredible story, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you think will happen next. Marcus Wellington's fingers trembled as he set down the 20th medical opinion on his mahogany desk. Each report said the same thing in different words: untreatable, terminal, unprecedented. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse office, casting long shadows across documents that spelled out his death sentence. At 32, Marcus had built an empire worth $800 million. His pharmaceutical company, Wellington Industries, had revolutionized 3 different medical fields. Irony had a cruel sense of humor. The man who had saved countless lives with his innovations couldn't save his own. "Mr. Wellington?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Dr. Peterson from Johns Hopkins is on line 1. He says it's urgent." Marcus closed his eyes. Another specialist, wanting to deliver the same devastating news with slightly different terminology. "Tell him I'm unavailable." The symptoms had started 6 months ago. Fatigue, strange rashes that appeared and disappeared, cognitive episodes that left him disoriented for hours. By the time he sought medical attention, whatever was attacking his body had already taken hold with vicious determination. Mayo Clinic, Mount Sinai, Harvard Medical, the best institutions in the world had examined every cell, every chemical compound, every possible genetic marker. They found the disease eating him alive, but couldn't identify what it was. Some called it an autoimmune cascade. Others suspected a viral component that defied classification. All agreed on one thing: Marcus Wellington would be dead within 8 weeks. He walked to the window, watching the city buzz with life 30 floors below. People rushing to meetings, grabbing coffee, complaining about mundane problems that would feel like luxuries to him now. His reflection stared back, still handsome despite the illness, still carrying himself with the confidence that had intimidated competitors and charmed investors for over a decade. The phone rang again. This time he answered. "Marcus, thank God." Dr. Sarah Chen's voice carried exhaustion and frustration. "I know you don't want to hear from another doctor, but there's a facility in upstate New York, the Riverside Research Center. They specialize in cases like yours, cases like mine." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Sarah, 20 of your colleagues just spent 6 months telling me there are no cases like mine. That's exactly why you need to go there. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan runs experimental programs for medical mysteries, patients with conditions that don't fit any textbook. Some people call it a last resort, but I've seen miracles happen in that place." Marcus rubbed his temples. Another facility, another round of hope followed by crushing disappointment. "What makes this different?" "Because they don't just treat the disease, Marcus. They treat the whole person, the whole environment. Dr. Morgan believes that sometimes conventional medicine misses the forest for the trees. She looks at factors other doctors ignore: environmental, psychological, even social elements that might trigger or mask symptoms. Sounds like pseudoscience. The woman has a Nobel Prize in biochemistry and has solved more medical mysteries than the rest of us combined. At least meet with her. What do you have to lose at this point?" What did he have to lose? Everything that mattered was already slipping away. His company stock had dropped 18% since rumors of his illness began circulating. Board members whispered about succession plans. His ex-wife Jennifer had called twice, probably calculating inheritance scenarios. "Fine," Marcus said. "But this is the last one, Sarah. After this, I'm done chasing impossible cures." 3 days later, Marcus's black Tesla pulled through the gates of Riverside Research Center. Unlike the sterile corporate medical facilities he'd grown accustomed to, this place felt almost residential. Brick buildings surrounded by gardens, winding paths between structures that looked more like a university campus than a hospital. Doctor Elizabeth Morgan met him at the main entrance. She was younger than expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes that seemed to see everything and judge nothing. "Mr. Wellington, welcome to Riverside. I know this has been an incredibly difficult journey for you." "That's one way to put it," Marcus replied, climbing out of his car. The October air carried the smell of fallen leaves and something else. Hope, maybe. Though he tried to suppress that dangerous emotion. "Before we begin any medical discussions, I'd like you to meet some of our other residents. We've found that isolation often makes mysterious illnesses worse. Human connection, even in small ways, can sometimes unlock healing pathways that medicine alone cannot reach. Marcus followed her through the main building, noting how different this place felt from other medical facilities. Artwork lined the walls, not generic corporate prints but real paintings created by patients. Soft music played from hidden speakers. People moved with purpose, but without the frantic urgency that characterized most hospitals. "How long have you been treating cases like mine?" Marcus asked as they walked. "Define like your," Dr. Morgan smiled. "If you mean wealthy pharmaceutical executives with undiagnosed autoimmune conditions, you'd be the first. If you mean people with complex medical mysteries that have stumped conventional medicine, I've been working with such cases for 15 years. They entered a common area where several patients sat reading, playing chess, or simply talking. In the corner, a young woman was helping a little girl with what appeared to be homework. The child couldn't have been more than 7, with beautiful dark skin and hair braided with colorful beads. She was pointing at something in a book with intense concentration. "That's Zara," Dr. Morgan said quietly. "Her mother, Keisha, works here as part of our cleaning staff. We have a policy that allows employees' children to spend time here after school, rather than in daycare. Many of our patients find comfort in the presence of children. There's something about their energy that promotes healing." Marcus watched the girl for a moment. Unlike most children her age, she seemed completely focused on whatever she was studying, turning pages with careful deliberation. There was something unusual about her intensity. The way she absorbed information like a sponge designed specifically for learning. "She's different," Marcus observed. "Zara is exceptional," Dr. Morgan agreed. "She has what some educators call a gifted cognitive pattern. She processes information and notices details that most people miss entirely. Her mother says she's been like that since she could talk. Teachers keep wanting to skip her ahead multiple grade levels, but Keisha prefers to keep her daughter grounded in age-appropriate social settings." The girl looked up then, her large brown eyes meeting Marcus's across the room. For a moment he felt an odd sensation, as if she was seeing something in him that he couldn't see himself. Then she returned to her book, leaving him with an uncomfortable feeling that this 7-year-old had just analyzed him more thoroughly than most adults ever could. "Mr. Wellington," Dr. Morgan continued, "I want to be completely honest with you. Based on the medical reports you sent, your condition is unlike anything I've encountered before. However, that doesn't mean it's hopeless. Sometimes the most complex puzzles have surprisingly simple solutions. We just need to look at them from the right angle." "And what angle is that?" "The angle that assumes we don't know everything yet. That's where we'll start tomorrow." As they concluded the tour and discussed his treatment schedule, Marcus found his attention drifting back to the corner where Zara sat. The girl was now drawing in a notebook, her pencil moving with the same focused intensity she'd shown while reading. There was something about her presence that he couldn't shake, a feeling that this wasn't a random encounter. Dr. Morgan noticed his distraction. "Zara will probably be around quite a bit during your stay. I hope that won't be a problem." "No," Marcus said, still watching the child. "No problem at all." As he prepared to leave that evening, making arrangements to return the next day, to begin his residency at Riverside, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months, curiosity about what tomorrow might bring. It wasn't hope exactly, but it wasn't despair either. Walking to his car, he passed by the window where Zara was still sitting. She looked up again, and this time she waved. A simple gesture that somehow felt like the beginning of something important. Marcus waved back, having no idea that this 7-year-old girl would soon see what 20 of the world's best doctors had missed entirely. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss what happens when Marcus begins his treatment at Riverside. Marcus returned to Riverside Research Center the following morning with 2 suitcases and a resignation that felt like defeat. His penthouse would sit empty while he underwent whatever experimental procedures Dr. Morgan had planned. His assistant would handle the company's daily operations, while the board of directors circled like vultures, waiting for confirmation of his deteriorating condition. The private room he'd been assigned was comfortable but modest, a far cry from the luxury he was accustomed to. Clean white walls, a single window overlooking the garden, basic furniture that served its purpose without pretense. For a man who owned homes in 3 countries, this sparse accommodation felt like a preview of mortality. Settling in okay, Dr. Morgan knocked on his open door, carrying a tablet loaded with what he assumed were his test results and treatment plans. "Define okay," Marcus replied, hanging his custom suits in a closet that would hold maybe 10% of his usual wardrobe. "Fair enough. I wanted to discuss our approach before we begin. Based on your medical history, I believe conventional diagnostics have been looking at your symptoms in isolation rather than as part of a complex system. Today we're going to map everything, not just the obvious symptoms, but patterns of when they occur, environmental factors, stress triggers, even social interactions that might influence your condition." Marcus sat on the bed, suddenly feeling exhausted despite having slept 8 hours. "You really think there's something 20 world-class physicians missed?" "I think 20 world-class physicians approached your case using the same methodological framework. Sometimes breakthrough discoveries happen when we change the framework entirely." Dr. Morgan pulled up a chair. "Tell me about the first time you noticed symptoms. Not just what happened, but everything that was happening in your life at that moment." For the next hour, Marcus recounted details he'd never shared with other doctors. The stress of a hostile takeover attempt, the end of his marriage, a pharmaceutical lawsuit that had consumed months of his attention, sleep deprivation, dietary changes, even social isolation as his work consumed more of his time. "Interesting," Dr. Morgan made notes as he spoke. "Your symptoms appeared during a period of extreme psychological and physical stress, but every doctor since then has focused exclusively on biological markers. Are you suggesting this is psychosomatic?" "I'm suggesting it might be psychobiological, real physical symptoms triggered or sustained by factors that pure medical testing can't measure. Your body is fighting something, but what if the enemy isn't a virus or autoimmune dysfunction? What if it's a cascade reaction to environmental and psychological factors that created the perfect storm for illness?" Before Marcus could respond, they were interrupted by a gentle knock. Zara appeared in the doorway, holding a drawing pad and looking uncertain about whether to enter. "Hi, Zara," Dr. Morgan smiled. "This is Mr. Wellington, the patient I mentioned." "Marcus, Zara wanted to show you something." The girl stepped forward shyly, holding out her drawing. Marcus took it, expecting typical childhood artwork, stick figures and rainbow houses. Instead, he found himself looking at a remarkably detailed sketch of the human circulatory system, complete with accurately labeled arteries and veins. "Zara, this is incredible," Marcus said, genuinely surprised. "Did you draw this from memory?" She nodded. "I was reading about blood in the library. Did you know that your blood goes around your whole body 60 times every hour? That's like really fast." Dr. Morgan watched the interaction with interest. "Zara has been fascinated by medical textbooks lately. Her mother says she's been checking out advanced anatomy books from the public library. I like how everything connects," Zara explained, her young voice carrying surprising sophistication. "Like how the heart talks to the brain, and the brain talks to the stomach, and everything works together. When one part gets confused, it can make all the other parts confused too." Marcus stared at the child, struck by the simplicity and accuracy of her observation. "You think the human body is like a conversation?" "Uh-huh. And sometimes when people get sick, it's because the conversation gets mixed up. Like when you're playing telephone and the message gets all wrong by the end." Dr. Morgan leaned forward. "Zara, can you explain what you mean by the conversation getting mixed up?" The girl thought for a moment, then pointed to Marcus. "Well, if someone is really worried or scared for a long time, their brain keeps sending scared messages to their body. And their body tries to help by making more energy and being ready to fight or run away. But if they stay scared too long, their body gets tired from being ready all the time, and then it starts making mistakes." Marcus felt something shift in his understanding. "Mistakes like what?" "Like forgetting which things are supposed to be in the body and which things are supposed to be kept out. Or like making too much of some chemicals and not enough of others. It's like when you're really tired and you accidentally put salt in your coffee instead of sugar." The metaphor was childlike, but the concept behind it was startlingly sophisticated. Marcus looked at Dr. Morgan, who was nodding thoughtfully. "Zara, that's a very smart way to think about autoimmune responses," Dr. Morgan said. "Marcus, what Zara just described aligns with some cutting-edge research about the connection between chronic stress and immune system dysfunction. 7-year-old just explained my condition better than Harvard Medical School, Marcus said, half joking but feeling genuinely unsettled by the girl's insight. Zara beamed at the compliment, then tilted her head with sudden curiosity. "Mr. Wellington, can I ask you something?" "Sure. When did you stop sleeping good?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "My mom says that when grown-ups are worried about big things, they forget how to sleep the right way. And when you don't sleep right, your body can't fix the little problems that happen every day. The little problems get bigger and bigger until they become big problems." Marcus thought about it. His insomnia had started almost 2 years ago, long before his symptoms appeared. First, it was just difficulty falling asleep as business pressures mounted. Then waking up at 3 a.m. with racing thoughts about company strategy. Eventually, he'd been surviving on 4 or 5 hours of fragmented sleep for months before his health began deteriorating. "I haven't slept well in almost 2 years," he admitted. Zara nodded as if this confirmed something important. "That's probably when the conversation started getting mixed up. Your brain was trying to tell your body to be ready for problems all the time, but bodies aren't supposed to be ready all the time. They're supposed to rest and fix things." Dr. Morgan was taking notes rapidly. "Zara, you should probably get back to your mother now, but thank you for sharing your drawing with Mr. Wellington." After the girl left, Marcus sat in stunned silence. "Is it possible that a child just identified the root cause of my condition?" "It's possible that a child just identified a critical component that our adult medical paradigms have been overlooking," Dr. Morgan replied. "Zara sees patterns differently than most people. She doesn't approach problems with preconceived notions about what's important and what isn't. So what does this mean for my treatment? It means we're going to start with the foundation and build up. Sleep architecture, stress response patterns, environmental factors that might be sustaining a chronic stress state. If Zara is right, if your body has been in emergency mode for 2 years, then we need to teach it how to return to normal function." Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since his diagnosis. The possibility that recovery might actually be achievable, not through some miraculous cure, but through understanding the simple truth that a 7-year-old had seen immediately. That evening, as he lay in his modest bed at Riverside, Marcus found himself thinking about the girl's words. For the first time in months, his mind wasn't racing with worry about company politics or medical prognoses. Instead, he was wondering what other simple truths he'd been missing while focusing on complex explanations. Sleep came easier than it had in years, and with it, the first glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, the conversation between his brain and body could be repaired. Leave a comment below about what you think Zara will discover next. Your engagement helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. 3 weeks into his residency at Riverside, Marcus Wellington was experiencing something that defied medical explanation: gradual improvement. His energy levels had increased noticeably, the cognitive episodes had decreased in frequency and intensity, and some of the mysterious rashes had begun to fade. Dr. Morgan attributed the progress to their comprehensive approach: regulated sleep schedules, stress reduction therapy, and environmental modifications that addressed his condition as a systemic issue rather than an isolated disease. But Marcus knew there was another factor contributing to his recovery: his daily conversations with Zara. The 7-year-old had become an unexpected fixture in his routine. Every afternoon she would finish her homework in the common area and then wander over to wherever Marcus was sitting. What had started as brief exchanges had evolved into lengthy discussions about everything from business strategy to human biology, with Zara displaying an intellectual curiosity that consistently amazed him. "Mr. Wellington," Zara said one Thursday afternoon, settling into the chair across from him with her usual collection of library books. "I've been thinking about your medicine." Marcus looked up from his laptop where he'd been reviewing quarterly reports. "My medicine? You mean the treatments Dr. Morgan has prescribed?" "All of it. The sleeping medicine and the stress medicine and the vitamins." She opened one of her books, a college-level text on pharmacology that she'd somehow convinced the librarian to let her borrow. "I think maybe you're taking too much stuff." This caught his attention immediately. "What do you mean?" Zara pointed to a page in her book filled with chemical diagrams that most adults would find incomprehensible. See, each medicine does something different to your body's chemistry. But when you take lots of medicines together, sometimes they start talking to each other instead of just doing their own jobs. Drug interactions, Marcus said, recognizing the concept. Yeah, but not just the bad kind. Sometimes medicines can make each other work too hard, like when two people are both trying to push the same door open. They're both doing the right thing, but because they're both doing it, the door swings too fast. Marcus felt a familiar chill of recognition. Zara had a gift for seeing patterns that trained professionals missed. What makes you think that's happening to me? She pulled out a notebook where she'd apparently been tracking his daily condition, something he hadn't even realized she was doing. I've been watching how you feel on different days, and I noticed that you feel worse on days when you take the afternoon vitamin pills along with your other medicines. Marcus stared at her notes. Written in careful 7-year-old handwriting was a detailed log of his energy levels. Mood changes and symptom fluctuations correlated with his medication schedule. The pattern she'd identified was subtle but undeniable. His worst days consistently followed the combination of his prescription, medications with the high-dose vitamin, supplements Dr. Morgan had recommended. Zara, this is... How did you even notice this? I notice everything, she said matter-of-factly. My mom says it's because my brain works different than other kids, but I think maybe the vitamins are making your stress medicine work too good. Like your body is trying to calm down, but then the vitamins give it extra energy, so it gets confused about what it's supposed to be doing. Marcus immediately called for Dr. Morgan, who arrived within minutes and examined Zara's notebook with growing amazement. This is remarkable, Dr. Morgan said. Zara, you've identified a potential interaction between Marcus's prescribed medications and his supplement regimen that our standard monitoring missed completely. Is it a problem? Zara asked. It might be a significant problem. Marcus, we've been giving you a mild sedative to help regulate your stress response, but the high-dose B-complex vitamins you're taking can actually counteract sedative effects and potentially amplify anxiety responses. The combination might be creating exactly the kind of neurochemical confusion that could sustain your symptoms. Marcus felt a surge of excitement mixed with disbelief. You're telling me that a 7-year-old just identified a medical error that could be contributing to my condition? I'm telling you that a 7-year-old with exceptional pattern recognition abilities just provided insight that could significantly improve your treatment, Dr. Morgan replied. And we need to adjust your medication protocol immediately. As Dr. Morgan left to modify his prescriptions, Marcus turned to Zara with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. Zara, what you just did, that's extraordinary. You potentially just saved my life. The girl blushed but looked pleased. I just like puzzles. And people are really interesting puzzles because all their pieces have to work together perfectly. Have you always been able to see patterns like this? Zara nodded. Ever since I was little. My mom says I used to point out things that grown-ups couldn't see, like when our old car was going to break down, or when my teacher was getting sick before she even knew it herself. That's not normal for kids your age. You know, I know, Zara said quietly. Sometimes kids at school think I'm weird because I notice too much stuff. But here people like it when I notice things. Marcus felt a protective instinct surge through him. This brilliant child was being treated as weird by her peers simply because her intellectual gifts were extraordinary. Zara, what you can do is incredibly valuable. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about being smart. Do you really think I'm smart? I think you're one of the smartest people I've ever met. Regardless of age. Over the following days, Marcus's condition improved dramatically as his medication regimen was adjusted based on Zara's observations. But more importantly, he found himself looking forward to their daily conversations with an anticipation that had nothing to do with his health and everything to do with the pure joy of interacting with such an extraordinary mind. He began bringing business puzzles for her to examine, market analysis challenges, strategic planning scenarios, resource allocation problems that his team of MBA graduates struggled with. Without fail, Zara would identify overlooked variables or suggest approaches that his trained professionals had missed. Mr. Wellington, she said one afternoon while reviewing a supply chain optimization problem, I think your company is trying too hard to make everything perfect. What do you mean? Look, She pointed to his charts. "You're spending lots of money to make sure nothing ever goes wrong, but that makes everything super expensive. What if instead of trying to prevent all problems, you just got really good at fixing problems fast when they happen?" The insight was brilliant in its simplicity. His company had been over-engineering their supply chains to prevent disruptions, but Zara was suggesting that resilience might be more valuable than prevention. It was a paradigm shift that could save millions of dollars. "Zara, you should run a company someday." "Maybe," she said thoughtfully. "But first I want to figure out why some people get sick when doctors can't figure out what's wrong with them. I think there are lots of people like you who just need someone to notice the right pattern." As Marcus continued to recover, he realized that his relationship with this remarkable child had become the most meaningful connection he'd experienced in years. She saw the world with a clarity that his wealth and education had somehow obscured. Every conversation revealed new layers of insight that challenged his assumptions about intelligence, problem-solving, and the value of different perspectives, but he also sensed that Zara was still holding back, that her observations about his condition were just the beginning of what she was capable of seeing, that intuition would prove more accurate than he could possibly imagine. Hit that like button if you're amazed by Zara's incredible abilities. What do you think she'll discover next? 2 months into his stay at Riverside, Marcus Wellington was experiencing something unprecedented, complete remission of his symptoms. Blood tests that had shown inflammatory markers off the charts now came back normal. The cognitive episodes had disappeared entirely. His energy levels had returned to what they'd been in his 20s. According to every medical measurement available, he was completely healthy. But Marcus wasn't ready to leave Riverside yet, and it had nothing to do with his health. "Mr. Wellington," Zara said one crisp November morning, settling beside him in the garden with her latest library acquisition, a graduate-level textbook on epidemiology. "I've been thinking about something important." "What's that?" Marcus asked, setting aside his tablet where he'd been reviewing his company's financial reports. His board of directors was pressuring him to return to Manhattan now that his health had recovered, but he'd been stalling, inventing reasons to extend his stay. "I think maybe you weren't just sick by accident," Zara said carefully, her 7-year-old voice carrying unusual gravity. "I think maybe something made you sick on purpose." Marcus felt his blood chill. "What do you mean on purpose?" Zara opened her textbook to a chapter on toxic exposure patterns. "I've been reading about how sometimes people get sick because bad things are put in their environment on purpose. Like how some companies used to put poison in the water to save money, even though they knew it would hurt people." "Zara, that's a very serious accusation. What makes you think someone might have deliberately made me sick?" The girl pulled out her notebook, the same one where she'd tracked his medication interactions, but now filled with additional observations. "I started thinking about when you first got sick, and I asked my mom to help me look up some things on the computer." She showed him pages of printed articles about corporate espionage, industrial sabotage, and bioterrorism. Marcus was amazed that a child her age was even capable of researching such sophisticated topics. "See, your company makes medicines that help people, right? And some other companies probably don't like that, because you take away their customers. So I was thinking, what if someone wanted to make you too sick to run your company anymore?" Marcus stared at her. The possibility had never occurred to him, but it wasn't entirely implausible. Wellington Industries had been involved in several high-stakes patent disputes over the past few years. They'd disrupted traditional pharmaceutical markets with innovative treatments that threatened established profit margins. But Zara, how would someone even do something like that? "Lots of ways," she said, flipping through her research. "Poison in food or chemicals that you touch, or even something in the air where you work. The tricky part is making it look like a regular sickness so nobody suspects." Marcus thought about his symptoms, the way they'd appeared gradually, the way they'd defied diagnosis, the way they'd seemed almost designed to be untreatable. What kind of evidence would we need to prove something like that? "We'd need to test things from your regular life, like your office or your car or places you eat. If someone was poisoning you, there might still be traces left." The conversation was interrupted by Dr. Morgan approaching with his daily test results. "Marcus, I have some interesting news. Your recovery is now complete by every measure we can calculate, but I've noticed something unusual in your baseline toxicology screenings." "Unusual how?" Marcus asked, his heart rate accelerating. "Well, when you first arrived, we ran comprehensive toxicology panels as part of our standard intake process. Most patients showed trace amounts of common environmental toxins, pesticides, industrial chemicals, that sort of thing. But your levels of several rare compounds were significantly elevated." Zara looked up from her textbook with intense interest. "What kind of compounds?" Dr. Morgan consulted her tablet. "Primarily organophosphate derivatives that aren't commonly found in normal environments. At the time, I assumed they were related to your pharmaceutical work, exposure to industrial chemicals during manufacturing processes. But now you think differently?" Marcus asked. "Now that you've recovered so completely, I had our lab run some additional analysis on your initial samples. The specific compounds we found are concerning. They're not used in legitimate pharmaceutical manufacturing, but they are known to cause exactly the kind of systemic inflammation and neurological symptoms you experienced." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. "Are you saying I was poisoned?" "I'm saying the evidence suggests exposure to substances that could cause your symptoms, and those substances aren't something you'd encounter accidentally." Zara had been listening with rapt attention. "Dr. Morgan, do you still have samples of those chemicals?" "Yes, why?" "Could we test them to see where they came from? Like if we knew what company made those chemicals, maybe we could figure out who had access to them." Dr. Morgan looked at Marcus with surprise. "That's actually an excellent investigative approach. Marcus, would you be willing to involve law enforcement in this?" Marcus's mind raced. If someone had deliberately poisoned him, it meant his illness hadn't been random misfortune. It had been attempted murder. But more than that, it meant someone had wanted to destroy not just his health, but his company and everything he'd built. "Before we involve police, I want to understand exactly what we're dealing with," Marcus said. "Can we trace these compounds without alerting whoever might have been responsible?" "Maybe," Dr. Morgan replied, "but we'd need help from someone with expertise in forensic toxicology." Zara raised her hand like she was in school. "My mum's brother works for the FBI. He does computer stuff, but he might know people who do poison stuff." Marcus stared at her. "Your uncle works for the FBI?" "Uncle David. He's really smart with computers. Mom says he helps catch bad guys who use technology to hurt people." The implications were staggering. Not only had Zara potentially identified that Marcus had been poisoned, but she also had a direct family connection to federal law enforcement. The coincidences were almost too convenient to believe. "Zara," Marcus said carefully, "when did you first start thinking I might have been poisoned?" "A few weeks ago, when I was reading about your company online. I saw that some other companies were really mad about medicines you made that were better than theirs. And then I started thinking about how weird it was that all those smart doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with you." "What do you mean, weird?" "Well, if someone is sick and nobody can figure out why, either the sickness is really, really new, or someone is hiding what's really wrong. Since your symptoms weren't completely new, other people have had inflammation and brain problems before, I thought maybe someone was hiding something." Marcus felt a chill of recognition. Zara's logic was flawless. His condition hadn't been medically unprecedented. It had been medically inexplicable. The difference was crucial. "Dr. Morgan," he said, "I want you to contact Zara's uncle. If there's even a possibility that someone attempted to murder me, we need to involve the authorities immediately. And if they did try to hurt you," Zara added quietly, "they might try to hurt other people too. Maybe other people who run companies that make good medicines." The thought hadn't occurred to Marcus, but it made perfect sense. If someone was willing to poison him to damage his company, they might target other pharmaceutical executives whose innovations threatened established interests. That afternoon, Dr. Morgan contacted FBI agent David Thompson, Zara's uncle, who arrived at Riverside within 3 hours. Marcus was struck by the family resemblance. David had the same intelligent eyes and analytical demeanor as his 7-year-old niece, though his were tempered by years of federal law enforcement experience. "Zara told me she thinks someone poisoned you," Agent Thompson said without preamble. "Based on what Dr. Morgan shared over the phone, I think she might be right. You're taking the word of a 7-year-old seriously?" Marcus asked. Agent Thompson smiled. Mr. Wellington, my niece has been solving puzzles since she was 3 years old. Last year, she figured out that our neighbor was stealing mail by tracking package delivery patterns that the postal service had missed. Zara sees things that trained adults miss all the time. Over the next several hours, Agent Thompson collected Marcus's toxicology reports, interviewed him about his daily routines prior to becoming ill, and began building a preliminary case file. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling: rare toxins, mysterious symptoms, and a victim whose business success had created powerful enemies. The next step is forensic analysis of your personal environment, Agent Thompson explained. We need to test your office, your home, your car, anywhere you spent significant time before becoming ill. If someone was systematically poisoning you, they left traces. As the meeting concluded, Marcus found himself looking at Zara with newfound amazement. This remarkable child hadn't just identified the medical solution to his condition, she'd potentially uncovered an attempted murder and connected him with the resources to seek justice. "Zara," he said as her uncle prepared to leave, "I owe you more than I can ever repay." "You don't owe me anything," she replied seriously. "But if bad people tried to hurt you, we have to make sure they can't hurt anyone else." That evening, as Marcus contemplated the magnitude of what Zara had uncovered, he realized that his illness had been just the beginning of a much larger story. Someone had tried to destroy him, but instead, they'd led him to the most remarkable person he'd ever met. The question now was, who had wanted him dead? And how far were they willing to go to achieve their goals? This story keeps getting more incredible. Share it with someone who needs to see how powerful observation and determination can be. The FBI's forensic investigation moved with surprising speed. Within a week, Agent Thompson's team had collected samples from Marcus's Manhattan penthouse, his corporate office, his private gym, and even his favorite restaurant. The results confirmed Zara's suspicions in the most chilling way possible. Someone had been systematically poisoning you for over 6 months. Agent Thompson reported during an emergency meeting at Riverside. "We found traces of the same organophosphate compounds in your office ventilation system, on your desk chair, and most significantly, in the water filtration system of your private executive bathroom." Marcus felt sick to his stomach. Someone had access to my personal office space for months. It appears so. The delivery method was sophisticated, slow-release chemical compounds that would absorb through skin contact and inhalation over time. Whoever did this had detailed knowledge of your daily routines and access to your most private spaces. Dr. Morgan looked horrified. The symptoms would have appeared gradually, worsening over time as the toxins accumulated in his system. It's diabolical, designed to look like a mysterious illness rather than poisoning. Zara, who had been quietly listening while working on homework, looked up with a troubled expression. "Uncle David, if they could get into Mr. Wellington's office whenever they wanted, doesn't that mean it was probably someone who worked at his company?" The implication hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You think someone on my own staff tried to kill me?" Agent Thompson nodded grimly. "The level of access required suggests either an employee or someone working with an employee. We're going to need a list of everyone who had security clearance to your executive floor." Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. His personal assistant, Jennifer Martinez, had unlimited access to his office. His head of security, Robert Chen, controlled all building access systems. Several executives had key cards that would allow them into his space. The cleaning staff came through every evening. "There's something else," Agent Thompson continued. "We've been investigating similar cases in other cities. 2 other pharmaceutical executives have died from mysterious illnesses in the past 18 months. One in Chicago, one in Seattle. Both ran companies that were disrupting traditional drug markets. You think there's a coordinated conspiracy?" Dr. Morgan asked. "I think someone is systematically targeting pharmaceutical innovators whose work threatens established profit margins. The question is whether this is corporate espionage that escalated to murder or something more organized." Zara had stopped pretending to work on homework and was now listening with complete attention. "Uncle David, can I ask something?" "Of course, sweetheart. If someone wanted to hurt lots of different medicine company people, they'd need helpers in each city, right? Like someone in Chicago to hurt the Chicago person and someone in Seattle to hurt the Seattle person." "That's right." So maybe instead of trying to figure out who hurt Mr. Wellington, we should try to figure out who told them to do it. Like, who's the boss of all the helpers? Agent Thompson stared at his 7-year-old niece with obvious pride. Zara, you just identified the exact approach we need to take. This isn't about finding one poisoner. It's about finding the organization that's coordinating multiple assassinations. Marcus felt a chill of realization. If I hadn't come to Riverside, if I hadn't met Zara, I would have died and everyone would have assumed it was a rare medical condition. The perfect crime. Except for one thing they didn't account for, Dr. Morgan said, looking at Zara with admiration. They didn't expect a 7-year-old genius to see the pattern they'd worked so hard to hide. Over the following days, the investigation expanded rapidly. Agent Thompson brought in specialists from the FBI's Organized Crime Division. Corporate financial records were subpoenaed. Travel patterns of pharmaceutical executives were analyzed for common connections. Zara appointed herself as unofficial consultant to the investigation, much to her uncle's amazement. She created elaborate charts tracking the similarities between Marcus's case and the other victims, identifying patterns that even experienced federal agents had missed. Look, she explained to the assembled team one afternoon, spreading her hand-drawn diagrams across a conference table. All 3 medicine company people got sick right before their companies were supposed to announce really important new medicines. Agent Thompson examined her charts. You're right. Marcus, your illness began just 2 weeks before Wellington Industries was scheduled. To announce your breakthrough diabetes treatment, the Chicago victim got sick right before his company announced a new cancer drug, another agent added, reviewing case files, and Seattle was about to release a treatment for Alzheimer's disease. Marcus felt pieces clicking together in his mind. Someone knew our announcement schedules. They knew exactly when to strike for maximum impact on our stock prices and product launches. Zara nodded enthusiastically. And if they knew about secret company stuff, they probably work for one of the big medicine companies that would lose money when the new medicines came out. Corporate espionage, Agent Thompson confirmed. We need to identify which established pharmaceutical companies had the most to lose from these innovations. The investigation took a dramatic turn 3 days later, when Agent Thompson received a call from the Seattle field office. They'd arrested a maintenance worker who had been found with samples of the same organophosphate compounds used to poison Marcus. He's agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence, Agent Thompson reported, and what he's telling us is bigger than we imagined. The maintenance worker, Paul Rodriguez, revealed that he'd been recruited by a man claiming to represent concerned investors in the pharmaceutical industry. He'd been paid $50,000 to install chemical dispensers in the Seattle victim's office ventilation system. The operation had been presented to him as industrial espionage, gathering intelligence on a competitor's research, not murder. Rodriguez says his contact claimed they were just trying to make the executive sick enough to miss important meetings and delay product announcements, Agent Thompson explained. He had no idea the chemicals were lethal. Did he identify his contact? Marcus asked. He provided a description and a phone number. We're tracing both now. Zara, who had been following every detail of the investigation, suddenly looked up from her notebook with excitement. Uncle David, I have an idea. What if we pretended that Mr. Wellington was still sick and made the bad guys think their plan was still working? What do you mean? Well, if they think Mr. Wellington might die soon, maybe they'll try to contact their helper again to check on how it's going. And then you could catch them. Agent Thompson looked at his niece with amazement. Zara, that's actually a sophisticated undercover operation strategy. Marcus, would you be willing to participate in a sting operation? Marcus didn't hesitate. If it helps catch whoever tried to kill me and prevent them from hurting others, absolutely. The plan they developed was elegant in its simplicity. Marcus would return to his company, but publicly maintain the fiction that his health was still declining. Dr. Morgan would issue carefully worded medical statements suggesting his condition remained serious. Meanwhile, FBI surveillance would monitor all communications and access to his office. The goal is to make the conspirators believe they need to accelerate their timeline, Agent Thompson explained. If they think Marcus is recovering too slowly, they might make contact with their inside person to increase the dosage or try a different approach. As Marcus prepared to leave Riverside and return to Manhattan, he realized that his relationship with Zara had evolved far beyond patient and observer. She had become his partner in unraveling a conspiracy that could have continued killing pharmaceutical innovators indefinitely. "Zara," he said the night before his departure, "what you've done is going to save lives. Not just mine, but potentially dozens of other people who would have been targeted." "I just like solving puzzles," she replied with characteristic modesty. "But this was the most important puzzle ever, because real people could get hurt if we got it wrong. What are you going to do after this is all over?" Marcus asked. Zara thought for a moment. "I think I want to study more about how to catch bad guys who hurt people. Maybe I can help Uncle David with more cases." Marcus smiled, knowing that whatever Zara chose to pursue, the world would be better for her contributions. But he also knew that their partnership was far from over. The sting operation was just beginning, and he would need her remarkable insights more than ever in the days ahead. The conspiracy they'd uncovered was vast and dangerous, but they'd also discovered something powerful in return. The extraordinary potential that emerged when wisdom and innovation worked together across generations. The question now was whether their partnership would be enough to bring down an organization that had already killed 2 people and nearly succeeded in killing a third. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. The conclusion will leave you speechless. The sting operation began on a cold December morning when Marcus returned to Wellington Industries for the first time in 4 months. His employees welcomed him back with obvious relief, unaware that FBI agents were now monitoring every electronic communication and physical access to the building. To maintain the deception that his health was still failing, Marcus had to carefully balance appearing sick enough to fool the conspirators while being healthy enough to function as CEO. Dr. Morgan had coached him on displaying subtle symptoms, occasional disorientation, fatigue that would come and go, the kind of inconsistent illness pattern that would suggest his condition remained serious but unpredictable. Zara, meanwhile, had convinced her mother to let her spend afternoons at Wellington Industries under the pretense of a special educational program Marcus had created. In reality, she was serving as an additional set of eyes, observing employee behavior patterns and identifying anything that seemed unusual. "Mr. Wellington," Zara said during his 3rd day back, appearing in his office with her usual collection of notebooks. "I've been watching how people act around you, and I think I know who the helper might be." Marcus looked up from financial reports he'd been pretending to struggle with. "What have you noticed?" "Most people seem really happy that you're back, even though they're worried about your health. But there's one person who acts different." "Different how?" Zara consulted her notes. "Your assistant, Ms. Martinez, asks lots of questions about how you're feeling and when your next doctor appointment is. But she asks them in a way that sounds like she wants to make sure you're still sick, not like she wants to make sure you're getting better." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Jennifer Martinez had been his personal assistant for 3 years. She had unlimited access to his office, knew his schedule better than anyone, and would have been perfectly positioned to orchestrate the systematic poisoning that had nearly killed him. "Zara, that's a very serious accusation. What makes you think she wants me to stay sick?" "Yesterday, when Dr. Morgan called to check on you, I heard Miss Martinez tell someone on the phone that you were still declining steadily, and that your doctor was very concerned about the next few weeks. But Dr. Morgan didn't say any of those things. She just asked how you were feeling." Marcus realized that Jennifer had been eavesdropping on his medical calls and then providing detailed updates to someone else. Information that could only be valuable to people monitoring the success of their poisoning campaign. "There's something else," Zara continued. "I looked up Ms. Martinez's information on the computer, and she used to work for Meridian Pharmaceuticals before she came here. That's one of the companies that lost lots of money when your diabetes medicine got approved. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Jennifer Martinez hadn't just been his assistant. She'd been a corporate spy, positioned to gather intelligence and, when necessary, facilitate his assassination. Marcus immediately contacted Agent Thompson, who arrived at Wellington Industries within an hour, disguised as a technology consultant. The FBI had been monitoring Jennifer's communications, but hadn't yet identified her as the inside contact. "We need to be very careful here," Agent Thompson warned during a private meeting in Marcus's office. "If Jennifer realizes we suspect her, she might warn her handlers that the operation has been compromised." "What's our next step?" Marcus asked. Before Agent Thompson could respond, Zara raised her hand. "I have an idea, but it might be dangerous." "What kind of idea?" her uncle asked. "What if Mr. Wellington pretended to be getting really sick again? Like, bad enough that he might have to go back to the hospital? If Ms. Martinez is reporting to the bad guys, she'd have to tell them right away. And maybe they'd say something on the phone that you could record." Agent Thompson looked at his 7-year-old niece with a mixture of pride and concern. "Zara, that's actually a sophisticated entrapment strategy, but it would put Marcus at considerable risk." "I'm willing to take the risk," Marcus said immediately. "If it helps catch these people and prevents them from killing others, I'll do whatever is necessary." They spent the rest of the afternoon developing a detailed plan. Marcus would stage a sudden health crisis the following morning, severe enough to require immediate medical attention, but not so dramatic as to seem suspicious. Dr. Morgan would be brought in to provide apparent medical treatment, while FBI agents recorded all communications. From Jennifer's desk, the operation began at 9:15 a.m. The next day, when Marcus collapsed in his office, carefully timing the incident for maximum visibility, Jennifer was the first to respond, calling for an ambulance and immediately contacting Dr. Morgan. What she did next confirmed every suspicion. While Dr. Morgan examined Marcus and FBI agents disguised as paramedics prepared to transport him, Jennifer stepped into her private office and made a phone call that FBI surveillance recorded in its entirety. "It's Jennifer," she said to someone on the other end. "Wellington just collapsed in his office. It looks serious this time." "No, I don't think he's faking." "The doctor seems genuinely concerned." "Guess I can arrange access to his office tonight if you need to increase the dosage. The quarterly board meeting is next week. If we can keep him incapacitated for another month, the merger will go through automatically." Agent Thompson and his team moved immediately. Jennifer Martinez was arrested before she could leave the building, and the phone number she'd called led to arrests in 4 different cities. The conspiracy was vast, involving executives from 3 major pharmaceutical companies who had coordinated to eliminate innovative competitors through systematic assassination. The scope of the operation was staggering. Over the past 2 years, they'd targeted 7 pharmaceutical executives, whose companies threatened established profit margins. Marcus had been their 4th successful elimination attempt, but also the first to survive long enough for their methods to be discovered. None of this would have been uncovered without Zara, Agent Thompson told the assembled FBI task force during their final briefing. A 7-year-old girl saw patterns that trained federal agents, experienced doctors, and pharmaceutical executives all missed. Zara, sitting beside Marcus during the briefing, flushed at the praise, but remained characteristically modest. "I just noticed things that seemed wrong. Grown-ups are usually too busy to notice when small things don't match up." 6 months later, Marcus Wellington stood before a congressional committee investigating corruption in the pharmaceutical industry. His testimony, supported by Zara's detailed observations and the FBI's evidence, led to sweeping reforms and the prosecution of dozens of corporate executives involved in the conspiracy. But the most significant change in Marcus's life wasn't professional, it was personal, Zara, he said one afternoon as they sat in the garden at Riverside, where he'd established a permanent research foundation. "I have something important to ask you." "What's that?" "Your mother and I have been talking, and we'd like to know if you'd be interested in having your education funded by the Wellington Foundation. Full scholarships through graduate school, access to the best teachers and research facilities in the world." Zara's eyes widened. "Really? Really? But there's one condition." "What condition?" Marcus smiled. "That you promise to keep using your gifts to help people. The world needs more people who can see what others miss." "I promise," Zara said solemnly. "But can I ask you something too?" "Anything. Will you keep being my friend even after I get really smart and grow up?" Marcus felt his heart constrict with emotion. "Zara, you're already the smartest person I know. And yes, I'll be your friend for as long as you'll have me." Years later, Dr. Zara Thompson would become one of the youngest recipients of a Nobel Prize in Medicine, for her revolutionary work in pattern-based diagnostics. Her research would save countless lives by identifying diseases that traditional medicine couldn't detect. But she would always remember that her most important discovery happened when she was 7 years old, in a garden where a dying millionaire taught her that intelligence without compassion was worthless, and where she taught him that sometimes the most complex problems have the simplest solutions. The pharmaceutical executives who tried to kill Marcus Wellington believed that money and power could eliminate anyone who threatened their profits. They never imagined that their greatest enemy would be a child whose only weapons were curiosity, observation, and an unshakable belief that truth always surfaces when someone cares enough to look for it. Marcus Wellington recovered completely and lived to see his innovations save millions of lives. But his greatest achievement wasn't any medical breakthrough. It was recognizing the extraordinary potential in a 7-year-old girl and giving her the resources to change the world. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply notice what others have overlooked. And sometimes the person who saves your life is the one you never expected to be capable of extraordinary things. In the end, Zara didn't just solve the mystery of Marcus's illness, she proved that wisdom has no age limit, and that the most valuable insights often come from the most unexpected sources. The conspiracy that tried to destroy pharmaceutical innovation was brought down by the very thing its architects never believed in. The power of a brilliant mind that saw patterns where others saw only chaos, and the courage to speak truth even when no one seemed to be listening. But someone was always listening. And that made all the difference, the end.